So we watched a few TV shows and a movie, if I'm not mistaken.
That wasn't no movie though. I don't know what that was. That wasn't no movie.
What is your criticism? The movie he's referring to is Honk For Jesus, Save Your Soul, something along those lines. So what was your problem with that movie?
Well, to me, I never got the understanding of what was going on with the movie. Till I'm sitting here now, 2 or 3 days later, and I still don't understand what was that movie about. What was the basic premises of that movie?
They were following a pastor and his wife as they were reopening the church after a scandal. It was pretty straightforward.
Really?
Was that not clearly established in the movie?
Not to me, but evidently to you it was.
So when they came out of the church with the news camera crew following them, and then had the headline on the news saying "church in scandal," blah blah blah, all of that stuff. The fact that they spent the entirety of the movie talking about that just
So you're telling me that you read the signs and everything, man, that said church and scandal and all that?
it would be difficult for me to come and critique a movie if I didn't pay attention to simple parts of it.
I'm critiquing this one, and I paid very close attention to it. And I was looking at it from a person who's actually involved with the church a lot.
So you don't think that maybe you just were sensitive to the fact that they spoke on a lot of issues in your cult?
I'm sorry. Forgive me. I thought he said in your cult.
Yeah, the trick. If let's Google the definition of a cult and see how closely the Christian church mirrors said definition, shall we?
Go for it. Because Christian lifestyle. That's what it is. That's your lifestyle and how you actually go about trying to live it. The key to it is trying to live as close to the way Christ did on earth, according to what we know of Him. And so you can have 100 individuals in one church, and they act 100 different ways.
A system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object.
Right. That figure and object would be Christ.
In most Christian churches, that figure or object is the pastor.
You just told me something brand new, something I didn't know. Because the pastor is merely a servant for that particular congregation.
Are you explaining to me how things should be or the way things are?
I'm explaining to you what the meaning behind pastor and all those things are.
So you're saying
what their positions are.
So you're saying that pastors within themselves, they don't have a God complex?
You may find some. I'm not going to tell you.
Particularly pastors of mega churches?
I've never attended a mega church, been a member of a mega church, so I couldn't speak on that and be totally honest about it.
Okay, so there isn't any names that come to mind of these mega church pastors that treat themselves larger than life?
Well, the thing is that those mega church pastors that I think you're talking about and everything, they don't treat themselves larger than life. The members under them, for some reason, don't know the journey of the Christian church, and they may treat them a little better.
A system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object kind of seems as if you're saying...
But see, that figure, that object is not the pastor. That figure, that object is Jesus.
But what you just said a second ago was that the members of the church treat the pastor larger than life.
Some members of the church treat the pastor larger than life because they're not informed well enough to know that that's not what they're to do.
I think that you just weren't open to paying attention to the movie. But I mean, I'm waiting for you to give me like a legitimate criticism because the storyline of the movie was blatantly obvious. So like, what is it like a legitimate?
What was so blatantly obvious about it to you?
The fact that they talked about the same thing consistently throughout the entire movie.
And what was that?
The scandal that they were in and the documentary that they were shooting in the process of opening back their church.
I realized that they were in a scandal that the pastor had been accused of messing with some young guy.
Guys.
Well, I only saw the one guy that stopped.
But they talked about it when he was saying, "Okay, we're going to pay him off." He named 4 people and said that there was one holdout. Like I think that you just weren't open to paying attention to the movie.
That might be true too, because I don't see any movies that's based on Christianity being a very legit positive look at the church itself.
Why does there have to be a correlation between the church and the inner dynamics of human beings, which obviously him doing this scandal, I don't think that it was Christianity or God that was messing with these young guys. That was the pastor of the church. And that's what it was a critique on, the specific pastor of the church. And you keep tying it back as if there is some unbreakable bond between the church and Christianity, which is why I call it a cult. The Christian church, Christianity within itself may be something, is something that's great. Christianity within itself, spirituality, all of that stuff. But to sit there and try and not be open to seeing the imperfections of the human beings that are running an institution that everybody knows is corrupt.
I'm not trying to be. What did you say? Something about imperfections. What did you say again? I'm sorry.
You're not open to seeing the imperfections of the people who run the church as if there's some correlation between them and God, which is the same way that they carry themselves.
Well, I hadn't seen that, and like you said, I've been in the church my entire life. Most churches that I've been a part of, the members don't treat the pastor like they're Jesus, like they're God. They treat the pastor with respect, and they give him admiration because we realize that's a very hard job to do. We realize that it's extremely hard, just like any celebrity. When people start to lifting you up,
so now we're correlating the pastor to celebrities.
Well, when you run in a mega church like the ones that I've seen, they are somewhat celebrities in that church, and a lot of them carry themselves outside of the church like they're celebrities.
Okay, so I guess my question is, what was inaccurate in their portrayal of said celebrity that you just established?
I didn't see anything going on in that church. They didn't give me any information.
I'm giving. I sat next to you in the movie, and I'm giving you information that I seen in the movie.
Well, we personally, me and you, because of our take on religion, would look at things.
Why does this have to be about religion? This is about a man who is in charge of an organization. I never had a problem with religion. My problem is with the church, and that's what that was a critique on. It never said it didn't bring up a single line of the Bible to critique any of that. It didn't mention anything that anything about God or Jesus. There was no critiques on Christianity in that entire movie. The critique was of the church, but I think it's problematic that you see.
But the critique should be of the man, not the church.
If we critique Jeff Bezos' business practices, is it fair to say that we're critiquing Amazon?
Probably.
So how is it possible to critique the man that is in charge of the organization without it being a critique also of the organization?
Because you can be in charge of an organization and still have subordinates up under you who are doing exactly what that organization is built on.
But you being in charge isn't going to play any role in the organization on the whole. You being the final decision maker.
The pastor is not the final decision maker in a church.
He specifically said he got rid of
He's a spiritual guider.
Why?
Well, first of all, you're right. In that particular movie, he did say he got rid of all those people, and to me, it no longer existed as a church when you get rid of the heart, the key function of the body.
I forgot what I was saying because you cut me off. Why is it what is it about the movie specifically that was a critique on Christianity that was inaccurate? I don't think it was a critique on Christianity at all. And I think it was an extremely accurate depiction of what modern day churches, or even churches, because you talk like I didn't also grow up going to church. Like I went to all these places. Like it's not like I haven't been to churches. My fair share of them. I stopped because of all of the stuff that was critiqued in that movie. What is it about that critique or portrayal that doesn't match reality?
Well, and for me, I didn't get enough information from it.
We watched the same movie,
and you got information from it I didn't get.
What information was lacking?
Well, it was a lot of things going on that I still don't understand.
Such as what? I'll break it down for you.
Why was the wife herself the one who's actually trying to get the church back functioning and everything properly. Why was all
Okay, I'm
these
going to
things?
answer your questions one at a time as you
Mm-hmm.
go through them. They both were trying to get the church back functioning, and I think that there was actually a specific quote when he walked away in the movie while they were sitting down in front of the cameras where she was like, cut the cameras off, I want to explain something. He's the face of the church. However, I am the neck and spine of the church. I'm the foundation of it. And thusly, also at the climax of the movie, she explained that it was both of their churches. They had both put in effort in order to build it to where it was. So what did she do that he didn't do in terms of getting the church back functioning?
Well, I honestly, we'll let the people watch that movie. I wouldn't advise anybody to go out and see it, but
It's because you're brainwashed.
the ones who want to see it should go out there and let them base their own opinion.
You just said
on
it wasn't a movie. You called it stupid throughout the whole movie,
It was a stupid movie.
and I'm asking you these questions, and I'm not getting answers. And I think it is because
well, the thing is that if next time we'll talk about this again, and I'll prepare all my questions and stuff for you. I can't come off the top of my head now and say, well, this is the reason why. This is the reason why. I saw something I didn't like, and we can sit here and talk about it.
I didn't say you have to like it, but if you're going to sit here and tell me that it's stupid, and I ask you very simple questions, like I'm not sitting here playing mental gymnastics. These aren't algorithms that you need to put into a Rubik's cube to get an answer to. If you ask me what is stupid about something that I think is stupid, as we will progress, because I didn't enjoy most of the things that we watched that we're going to talk about. If you ask me, hey, why do you think this stupid? What do you think is the critique? What do you think is unrealistic about this? Where is your critique of this? Especially if I'm going to speak as a member of the society that is being critiqued and then say that it's a stupid critique, I think that I should be in a position where I should be able to explain what is stupid about it. And it's like that's all you've said is that, oh, well, I didn't get it. What was the plot of the movie? Then I calmly explained to you the plot of the movie. And like, okay, well, yeah, I do know that that's what they were talking about throughout the entire movie. I wrote down I wrote down during the movie some things that I seen in there that I thought were very accurate portrayals of usually the pastors of these larger churches that they hit on the head. That they're vain, theatrical, materialistic, performative, all of these things. The way that he was inappropriate in his sexuality, all of that type of stuff. Him getting undressed in front of a little girl. They specifically they were so unsubtle about the joke when she went into the Holy Ghost and then afterwards she called it theater. All this stuff, it happened in the movie that we were sitting down watching, and I'm sitting down asking, okay, well, I think it was an accurate critique. I think that it was realistic portrayal, and you're telling me that it was stupid without.
You stated earlier that you grew up in the church. You've been going to the church the majority of your life because your mother and we always attended church, and we took you and Mark to church with us
twice a week. So it's not like you're making it seem like I'm coming here speaking from some kind of from a place of ignorance.
Tell me, within your 29 years of life, how many pastors you saw undress in front of the church?
I recall you guys consistently talking about how some pastor of a mega church, Creflo Dollar, used to walk around in the tightest of shirts to show off his body.
No, that's the Creflo never done that.
Okay,
Eddie Long used to do it.
All right, so it's not that I was wrong about what happened. I was wrong about the name of the person. My bad.
But did you see Eddie Long in the tight shirts?
Yes,
because that was a trademark of his. Those little tight shirts.
Okay, and you don't think that was a bit vain to show off his muscles, to show off his body?
For him to walk around in a tight shirt because he was into weightlifting and all that kind of stuff, and for him to walk around as a pastor to show those muscles, it was different, but that wasn't anything ungodly. Even though he was accused of doing some ungodly things.
You see how you asked me a question and I came off the top of my head with an answer for you?
Right.
So now I'm going to redress my questions.
Okay.
What aspect of it was unrealistic?
Well, the one I just mentioned, I've never in my life seen a pastor undress in church like that. Two, I don't know what was going on with this guy, because evidently he wasn't worried about the people. He was vain and thinking about himself.
I don't think I've ever been to a church where the richest member wasn't the pastor.
Well, you hadn't been to a lot of churches because I know the majority of the churches that you ever grew up in, the pastor wasn't nowhere near the most wealthiest person in the church.
Yeah, he just has the nicest suits and the nicest car.
Guess why? Because a lot of times during pastor appreciation, you have members and stuff who buy them nice suits. You even have some churches that may invest in the pastor having a nice car.
Do you recall the story of the woman who sold her car or gave away the money she was saving up for a car because she couldn't get back and forth to work, so her pastor could get a new plane?
That was a story with Trustful Dollar member. They said this woman said she saved the money she was saving for her car. She gave it towards the love offering so he could get a Learjet.
What's your reaction to another Learjet? Because he
that-
had one already. He needed a new one, right?
That within itself, that spoke of that woman being uninformed and uneducated in the Bible. That's why Timothy tells us as followers of Christ, as followers of God, that we should study to show ourselves approved unto God to be workmen who need not to be ashamed but rightfully divide.
I will bring this back to the point that I say that this is not the word of truth. This is not a critique of Christianity. Like I said, the movie had nothing to do with the Bible. I've already mentioned that. But
you're right.
You're trying to take this and make it, they're saying this, that, and the third about the Bible, about Christianity. It is a critique of an organization that has common problems. But let me finish speaking. You will not accept the fact that there's problems with this organization because you would rather be blind to it. And that's the real problem. That's what the real critique is. They have you in the movie. Those 5 members that was like, we don't care what the pastor does. We don't care what he does. He's done this, that, and the third for the church, so that makes anything that he does okay, and we're willing to overlook it. And now you'll sit there and see an honest critique, a realistic critique of it, and have no reason to call it stupid, but then sit there and call it stupid and then try to preach to me.
But see, you keep saying, and this is where me and you, we have a disagreement, a totally different disagreement, is that that's not a critique of the church.
What is it?
It better be a critique of him. And just because he was a part of the church, that don't make it a critique of the church.
Okay, but he's so important that people will be buying the pastor's suits, showing all this adulation to the pastor, paying 10% of their money to the pastor every single month. They'll pay 10%. But then when you critique people like him, because that wasn't a pastor, that was an act. No, that was not a pastor. Let me finish speaking. Stop cutting me off. That was not a pastor.
I don't want to lose my thought. You can finish, but I want to speak on that too.
So I could lose my thought then.
No. I'm just going to say you don't pay 10% of your tithing to the pastor. That's to the church. And the church is more than just a pastor. But go ahead on. I'm sorry.
The fact of the matter is, when it comes time to critique him, people like you aren't open to critiques that are honest. That was not. Let me finish speaking. That wasn't a pastor. That was in that movie. That was an actor. That was not a pastor. That was an actor in that movie. So it's not a critique of him specifically. They have him playing a role that they are critiquing, a very common role, and it's not like they just made up the fact that this type of stuff happens. The whole reason you went to the movie was like, yeah, we give them enough ammo to try to shoot at us, so we have to understand that they're going to shoot at us. What is that ammo that you were referring to?
What I guess you're not seeing what I'm saying. I can guarantee to you I knew that guy was an actor. I've seen him in a lot of different movies. But I'm talking about the part that he's playing. He was an actor playing the part as a pastor.
Where do you think they got that from?
Well, I know where the whole storyline probably came from. It came from the Eddie Long situation.
So there's a very famous, popular story of a pastor that has fallen into that same situation. Yet for some reason, you're making it seem like it's an unrealistic critique of the job.
Marlon, you can go to any Skid Row in any big city in the country and find people who were pastors who fell out of grace and did other things, and they're living homeless on the street. Just because you're a pastor, that don't mean that you're above God. Most of those ones that you find who's falling on hard times, they were like Satan. They put themselves above God. They thought that people come there to see them and not to hear the word of God.
You're not even open to an honest critique of something that you see a real life parallel to based on these people. So I don't think it's them. I don't think it's them that's the problem.
It might be me. But before we move on to the next movie or to the next TV show or whatever, what I would like to say is that I've walked this lifestyle for over 30 something years, and doing this lifestyle, everything hadn't been the best for me, but God has not yet once.
This is not about God, and that is the problem. That's the problem. That's the problem, that you can't can't break that correlation between the church and God. No, this is the problem right here. God is an entity. God is what God is. God is however anybody wants to define it, whatever. What he's not is a building full of people who have members in a hierarchy. That's not God. So if I'm going to sit here and criticize, if I criticize an animal rights organization like PETA, who obviously, painfully obviously, has so much problems within it, so many issues that are well documented, I'm not saying that animals don't deserve rights. And anybody who has a half of brain could understand that. I'm not saying you don't have a half a brain. I'm just saying that that's painfully obvious, that I am critiquing an organization. I'm critiquing a system of organizations. I'm not critiquing what that organization is, what that organization at its core stands for. I think Honestly, the reason why I don't go to church anymore is because when I sit inside the church, what you felt watching that movie is exactly what I feel. All of these theatrics, none of this makes sense. It's all fake. It's all lies. And the fact of the matter is, I think that's extremely blasphemous for them to take something as sacred as Christianity, take something as sacred as people's relationship with God and the Lord, and make it into the buffoonery that has turned into this church. That's the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is their critiques were not only theirs. I thought they were extremely surface level. I don't think they went in depth into any sort of specifics of anything. I think that their critiques were universal.
And my thing is that Christianity, if you never paying attention to anything else that I tell you, anything that I say, you don't go to the church to find God. You go to the church in order to fellowship with others, but you have to go to your room, pick up your Bible, and study and find God. You have to get on your knees and find God. And if you're looking through me,
how many times do I have to say this ain't about God?
Okay, but
how many times do I have to say that though? I started off with that. I keep repeating it. This is not about God.
Marlon, but let me finish. See, you can say it's not about God, but yet and still it represents the church, and then you lump the whole church into it.
Okay, so did you hear the part where I said I think it's particularly blasphemous to take something as sacred as God and Christianity and then treat it the way that they do?
And what I would say to you is that don't worry about church. Don't worry about church people. Just have your relationship. Let the pastor do what he want to do.
I have my relationship with God without going to church.
The pastor, right, and the pastor's going to answer for anything that he does.
Okay, so now my question is, if I shouldn't be focused on church people and what church people do, we can assume that there is some reasoning behind that. How does that make this critique unrealistic? Which is what I keep bringing it back to that point. How is this critique not a reflection of reality if you're sitting here telling me, oh, well, you can't be focused on these people?
Well,
because that's what it's a critique of people. This is a critique of people, not God or Christianity. I can show you movies that are a critique of God and Christianity, and then I'll sit there and tell you they're stupid too. I watched Religulous, and I thought it was a ridiculous movie. It's not like I'm sitting here saying that God isn't real or that Christianity isn't sacred. What I'm saying is this particular movie was not a critique of Christianity. It was a critique of the organization of the church and the people who run it.
See, and that's where we differ. That's where we differ. That critique there didn't have anything to do with the church and the organization who run it. That critique should have been about this man who knew when he was messing with those other men that was wrong. Because you're not going to find that anywhere in the Bible where it's acceptable in the church.
So you don't know any pastors that's banging all the women in the congregation?
No, I don't know any.
See, I don't want to use names. I don't want to name drop, but I know ones that you know. So I think that's being a little dishonest.
Well, no, because you're telling me, do I know anyone? And who you're probably talking about, I know them, but I don't know for certain that they were doing what people say they were doing. That's gossip in the street. He may have been doing everything the church said, everything that people say, but yet and still, that's not for me to say because I didn't see it.
If somebody were to sit in front of you and critique me, you would be more open to hearing it. Knowing me personally as well as you do, you'd be more open to hearing it than you are open to hearing critiques
Right.
about ministers that are like I say, extremely surface level. These aren't they didn't nothing is novel. Nothing in that entire movie was a novel critique.
If someone was standing in front of me critiquing you, yeah, I would hear it because I know you well enough to know the lie or the truth. And I'd be able to actually tell them that's not true. That's not true. If you're talking about Marlon wouldn't do that. His morals wouldn't allow him to do that. If you're talking about Marlon is far too intelligent to do something like that. And if they say something that I think I'm like, okay, well, you name one person who had made mistakes and keep it moving. That's how I would look at that critique of you because I know you.
I think that was an extremely important piece of art for the world, and I think that it's open to an honest look at from anybody who involves themselves within that sphere.
And Marlon, I would agree that 90% of the your demographic would see it the way you see it because we as parents we failed our kids.
Elaborate.
When it comes to religion, when it comes to, you said something once that caught my attention, and I thought about that stuff. And you said that we as parents, we don't raise our kids to be individuals who make up their own mind. We raise our kids in order to follow rules and regulations that we've already set, that's already been structurally set for them. And I thought that's so true. We follow this regiment to where we're raising kids to be like us when they're individuals, when we don't give them, we'll tell them to
What
shut
I said
up.
was that y'all don't raise y'all kids to be independent adults. Y'all raise y'all kids to be children. That's it. And that's because growing up, every single thing that I got in trouble for, I was extremely well aware that if I wasn't a kid, this would no longer be something that's wrong. So how is this setting me up to be an adult?
And I agreed with that fully. And as you can see, it stayed on my mind.
My thing is, I don't think the reasoning why most people in my demographic would look at the church and be like, yeah, that is an honest critique of it, is because parents have failed us. I think it is because the leaders of the church have failed us. When you were growing up, when you listen to what I'm saying, when you were growing up, the church, what you knew about the church was your church. You went and found a good one, because I think that the church I grew up in was a good church, even though I can levy some of these criticisms towards it. However, I think that y'all found a good one. I think the one that we went to before y'all found the most recent one was a perfect example of a church that has a whole bunch of inner mechanisms going wrong that would turn somebody off of the church. If I'm not mistaken, Mommy actually wrote, if not her dissertation, but some sort of long form article or book about why young people are leaving the church. And the reality of the situation is, it's not because our parents are failing us, it's because we are more aware of what's going on than y'all were growing up, which, not saying that we're smarter than y'all were. I think we are, but the reality of the situation is y'all didn't know anything outside of y'all neck of the woods when you were growing up.
My thing is, and your mama tell you, and I don't know if you and Mark
was it her dissertation, or what was she writing about that?
Her dissertation.
Okay,
so the attractiveness of Christianity.
A PhD level dissertation about why young people are leaving the church.
Yeah. Well, my thing is that your mom would tell you, and I don't know if you and Mark picked up on it, we go to church and the pastor would preach his sermon and whatever. But in our household, I was the pastor. The household ran according to the way your mom and I wanted it. We was outside of the box.
You were not the pastor in the church, in the household, because our house wasn't a church. That's where you find pastors.
Yeah. Well, see, the church is where two or three or more will gather together, touching an agreement. And yeah, we the four of us, I was the pastor of that house. I say of our house.
You were the father figure and the head of the house, and I will give that to you.
Well,
but
there was never any head and bottom in our house. Your mom and I, we work together. I didn't tell her what to do. She didn't tell me what to do.
You don't think it's problematic that you're correlating a father who did a good job to being the pastor of a church?
No, not at all.
And that's the problem.
Not at all.
Because people like me who sees all the craziness, all the dysfunction that goes on in that.
Well, see, you're looking at the dysfunction of it. I'm not looking at the church itself. I'm talking about in this house here, in our household.
This movie was not a critique of our house. This movie was a critique of extremely large churches.
See, you done left the conversation and went back to the movie.
Well, because that's what this podcast is about.
But what we're talking about now is the way members of the church conduct themselves at home.
No, that's what you are trying to change the subject from, because you don't want to address the fact that what goes on in the church and what goes on in that movie are similar. You don't want to say, yeah, that type of stuff happens in the church. So let's change the subject and make it about our house, because I don't act like that.
No,
so
Marlon,
now
I'm not saying that type of stuff don't happen in the church. We realize that do happen, and it do happen in certain cases, but that's not the norm. That's not the majority of what goes on. How many mega churches you think they have in this whole country?
a lot.
They probably have 20 at the most.
That's a lot, ain't it? Mega churches.
No, I'm talking about 20 out of thousands. That's not a lot. You're a math man. 20 out of thousands is not a lot.
What I'm saying is, if you got 20 different churches, which I think it's intellectually dishonest to imply that not every state has at least one mega church, and that states like Texas, California, New York, Florida wouldn't have multiple ones. But let's put that to the side, because see, when I think mega church, I think like the size of the church that Uncle Courtney went to.
Well, when I think mega church, I'm thinking any congregation over 25,000 people.
You don't think that it's a problem for that many people to be following one man and not open to criticism about him?
Well, Marlon. Probably 80% or 70% or 60% of most members that go to mega churches, they have problems with the pastor. That's why mega churches have problems.
That's what the movie was a critique of. That's it. Like, that's what the movie was a critique. What you just said, that's what it was a critique of. Mm-hmm. How he went in his closet was talking, I think I should wear Prada. How she bought a $2,000 hat. There was so many aspects of that movie. And like I keep saying, these aren't even deep. These aren't even deep critiques. These are surface level, what everybody already knows.
And Marlon, what I'm trying to get you to see is that you got less than 1% of people who pastor churches who could do that, who live like that.
Okay, but my thing is, even if it's on a smaller scale, there's a reason why there's so many people that's running trying to be pastors and behaving like that, because it opens a door for them to.
Marlon Jones, we're not gonna come to an agreement on that. So
I feel like I have more structurally sound points, though. I'm gonna be honest with you.
You do. I don't disagree with anything that you said.
You disagreed with everything that I've said.
No, I didn't disagree with it. I just didn't. I didn't agree with the form in which the way you said it, and the form in which it was said. Because to me, you was lumping in too many pastors into that one little percent. And all pastors are not in that 1%. Pastor Baker would love to be in that 1%. Pastor Chester would love to be in that 1%. Pastor Logan would love to be in that 1%, but they're not in that 1%.
My thing is, just because you don't have all these Prada suits and all this and all the amenities, the Ferrari and Bugatti and stuff.
I don't even know what a Bugatti is.
Just because you don't have all that stuff doesn't. The thing is, if you go to these small churches where everybody in there is living below the average median income of America, you go to these churches in these poor neighborhoods, you still have these flamboyant, boisterous, vain pastors that have so much materialistic stuff. Why? Where did it come from? Nobody else in the church has this much material items except for you. That's not a 1% thing.
I wish I could agree with that part of Marlon, because I know a lot of churches where pastors they wear in the same suit 2-3 times a month.
Okay. Yo, they killed my boy Jamie.